Hi, Future Cabbage here. So, you might be wondering, like, why the video is a little shorter than expected, and that's because, Andrew Garfield's really the only other Spider-Man I haven't, like, concretely talked about in previous videos, and, by the time the video goes up, like, Spider-Man No Way Home will be out tomorrow, at least for me anyway, so, yeah, I really wanted to get, like, little snippets of my thoughts about Andrew Garfield before the movie comes out, and I'll definitely do more on Andrew Garfield at a later date, after the No Way Home review, obviously. But for now, I just really wanted to get my little thoughts on Andrew Garfield. So, I hope you guys enjoy the video overall, and sorry if the video is a little shorter than what I expected. I'll try to make a better video later. So, I'm a bit late on YouTube. Every film and piece of media that I want to talk about has already been discussed with hundreds, if not thousands of content creators. And this is especially true when looking at Spider-Man as a whole. But I still want to have my turn. Spider-Man has a lot of things. He's heroic, relatable, funny, charming, and everyone has their own personal favorite Spider-Man. People love Tobey Maguire's maturity and loving heart, whereas others adore the witty and charming Andrew Garfield. Or if you're like me, you can also prefer Tom Holland's down-to-earth take on the role and feel like he relates more to his humanity than any of the other Spider-Man. These are all different opinions that different people have, and that's completely fine. But everybody, I mean everybody in the Aunt Mays, can absolutely agree as a unit that The Amazing Spider-Man as a whole is a bad installment as films overall. The Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2 have been beaten down at best for overall film quality, but also how these are bad Spider-Man movies. But I'm not here to talk about that. Instead, I'm going to focus on one thing, one specific character that stands out in the first movie for me. And that is Andrew Garfield. In case you don't want to stick around for however long this video is and want to go straight to the comment section, then here, let me make it easy for you. Andrew Garfield is not the reason why these movies are terrible. Hell, it's not even why Spider-Man in these movies are either barely passable to god-awful. Okay, now that you know how to weed them out, time to go into a bit more in depth on Andrew Garfield's take on Spider-Man. I'm your favorite Vespa Cowboy, and this is Characterizing Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man. When looking at the standalone acting of Andrew, he is actually a very good actor. When I watched him in The Amazing Spider-Man 1, I could truly understand the things he was feeling in the movie. Okay, maybe he's a head of us, but you know what I'm talking about. Before I get into how he is a Spider-Man, because there's some scenes I need to get into with that, I am looking to him as Peter Parker. And honestly, he simply doesn't resonate with me as Peter Parker out of the three live-action Peters. His personality seems to fluctuate throughout the movie, and it's really hard for me to understand who this Peter is supposed to be. He constantly goes from his cool skated kid to his complete awkward mess that doesn't know how to say words to the point where he starts making inhuman sounds. Okay. No. The lizard can't even compete with that.
Poor Peter Parker.
It feels like there's no clear or core personality that Peter himself has in the movie, and the way he acts in one scene doesn't correlate to how he acts in other scenes. For example, he goes from being very caring and loving to his uncle and aunts, to a point where he flat out tells Uncle Ben that he is a great father figure to him.
You're a pretty great dad, right?
Only to completely later disregard him and his Aunt May, leading to this huge argument that ends up with Peter rusting out of the house. And I'm sorry, but by all accounts this makes no sense. So as Peter Parker, he definitely isn't standing out for me. Sometimes he works, other times he doesn't.
This is called strategy. I'm sure you're aware of the term strategy. Probably heard about that in school.
Now as Spider-Man, there's quite a lot going on. But I'm here to talk about Andrew's take on Spider-Man himself, not the ridiculing subplot of Spider-Man who he has an outright menace and goes out for revenge on Uncle Ben. But I'll get into that later. As Spider-Man himself, he is definitely the most quippy and campy take on Spider-Man that I've seen ever since Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. He cracks jokes, but it isn't oversaturated ways and endangering the lives of innocent people. I sure do hope that keeps it consistent with his personality and that they don't go completely overboard with it. Well, in the first Amazing Spider-Man, I really did enjoy Andrew Garfield's energy as Spider-Man. For personality alone, I felt like I was watching the core of Spider-Man. He cracked jokes under pressure, but he was still doing the right thing and protecting others. And when it really came down to it, he really knew how to connect to others and reassure them. This is especially true with the bridge scene. When somebody's life was truly at stake, he understood the fear this child was going through and did everything to make sure he felt safe. He even went out of his way to take off his mask and be like, hey, I'm just a normal guy. That spoke volumes for what Andrew Garfield could really bring to the table as Spider-Man. I feel like from acting alone, Andrew Garfield brought the perfect mix of wittiness and heart of Spider-Man. Now you might be noticing that I've been emphasizing on how Andrew is a great Spider-Man by himself or from acting and personality alone. Well, that's because in practice, he isn't that great. But that is from acting. This is where the problem lies with both Spider-Man movies. That is from the writers telling him to do these awful things that ended up making him look like a huge jackass in the movie. Now, I don't mind Peter going on a vengeful path that started Uncle Ben's death. I think that from overall film standpoint, it would be a more realistic approach for the character to allow for some growth and understanding responsibility. But when it comes to being a Spider-Man movie, the amount of time Peter takes to stop being vengeful is where it all matters. And Peter in this movie took pretty much half of the movie to understand what it means to be Spider-Man. And it wasn't that he was just looking for the man that killed his uncle. No, when he failed to find him, he let the criminals off scot-free sometimes. There was a difference between being a vigilante and being an outright abuser. Spider-Man for half of the movie was abusive and not even capturing these criminals half the time. But that's the main point I'm trying to bring up here. This wasn't Answer's doing. This was the writer's doing. And although I didn't concretely address this in my Spider-Man 2 video, but this also relates to Tobey's role in Spider-Man 2. These writers are what makes these movies fall from grace. They told Tobey Maguire to constantly get beaten down, even if there were times where he shouldn't have. They told Andrew Garfield to be an outright villain. They told Andrew Garfield to keep going on with his revenge story for half of the movie. Andrew Garfield is not the reason why the take on Spider-Man is disappointing. And it honestly pained me to see the pure potential this actor has with being Spider-Man not to be fully realized as he is locked behind poor writing and storytelling decisions. But all hope isn't lost yet, because my boy Kevin Feige is thinking about as Andrew Garfield is appearing in Spider-Man No Way Home. And I honestly truly believe that Feige can bring this actor's potential to its fullest. Unless the rumors are true about Mark Webb returning to No Way Home. Thank you all so much for watching. This was sort of an experimental video that I had in mind, sharing my thoughts on Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man by himself and how he could have been a lot better if the writing wasn't a disordered mess. I could have done just a full-on review of the Amazing Spider-Man myself, but it feels overdone at this point in time, so sorry if the video is a little shorter than what I expected it to be. But that's all I have for this video. If you enjoyed, be sure to like the video and share your thoughts on Andrew Garfield's take on Spider-Man. And if you did enjoy this segment, be sure to subscribe and hit the little notification bell so you can get notified when future content releases. It helps out the channel a lot. It's free and you can always unsubscribe later. But anyways, that's all I have for this video and I'll see you all in the next one. I'm your favorite vegetable Cabbage Boy, signing off.